Now let's play with this, and the first thing I want to do, I want to disable my dissipation because I don't have a smoke and I don't need to add dissipation for the smoke. And disturbance, as we did for the smoke, I want to break this shape into a smaller parts. I don't want to have too many disturbance on a surface, and I won't work with velocity. So I'll keep those settings by default, just change the disturbance a little bit smaller to like 0.2, and now you can see that we have some disturbance on the surface. Again, it's not too many for now with low, very low res scene for now, but you can see, you can compare result without disturbance and with this. Without disturbance, we're gonna have a very flat shape. Even with some noise on our fuel source, we have a very flat shape here after the source. And with the disturbance, and just with a small amount, we will have a nice result. Looking like interesting fire. So now let's go to the shredding. I will turn off disturbance by the moment to see influence just for shredding. And by default, shredding create like leaks and streaks for our fire. You can see that it's like a separate our fire for different flames here. Well, it's too dramatic now with the 0.5, so maybe like 0.15. Maybe you should have a good setup, because maybe for a huge simulation, maybe shredding bigger should be good, but even now with 0.15 is looking pretty nice without disturbance create like leaking. It's looking more like a fire. It's using the heat temperature and the heat field. It's basically change of velocities using the heat field, so mainly shredding applying to the fire. The main parameters for our shredding is squash and stretch. So basically it's stretch or squash the velocity field, as we can see here, when the temperature is below the temperature threshold. So the temperature threshold we have here 0.75, and this threshold width again is like a transfer. And the squash and stretch, well, I can decrease the stretch maybe like to 0.25 here at the moment, and that's what I want to change here. Again, you can add additional control settings, so you can control field which will control the influence on this velocity. You can define the field with that, but by default I'm gonna leave this as it is. Okay, let's enable disturbance. So that's main two parameters working with the flames. If you're going to use the smoke simulation in your combustion model, you can turn on the sharpening for that. But sharpening work with density, so if we don't have a density, it's not useful for us at the moment. So mainly to those parameters, I just want to apply it for now. All right, and I'm gonna leave turbulence now turning off. Sometimes when we don't have a very turbulent areas, you can use it. But mainly I use it for a smoke. For fire, we already have some disturbance and shredding and some temperature from our combustion model. So the last thing I want to add here is on advanced tab, we definitely need to increase the maximum sub-steps to like 2 or 3. In this case, 3 is like a minimum, and the reason for that is because you already saw that we have some interesting like a layering. We have some layers moving from our source, because with the combustion model we have a high temperature, sometimes we have high velocities, and using the high velocities we need to create more accurate simulation, and that's why we're going to use some more sub-steps for this moment. Okay, so maybe like 3 should be fine for that. So before we go in further and talk about rendering and importing this simulation, I just want to change something. So let's create like an example of the fire, not just using a simple sphere, but I want to add a logs over here and play a little bit with settings, play with the importing, caching, and rendering, which is more important here.